It was an ordinary Monday morning, the kind that greeted you with the usual humdrum of coffee brewing, phones buzzing, and the clattering of keyboards. The city was waking up, and the office building was no different. Tall, sleek, and modern, it stood as a testament to corporate power and success. But behind the glass doors and polished floors, something was brewing that would change the course of everything for the employees at the renowned tech company. Rachel Matthews walked into the office that day, the confidence in her stride evident to anyone who looked closely. She wasn't just any employee. She was one of the brightest minds in the company, a woman of color who had broken through numerous barriers to get to her position as head of marketing. Yet, despite her achievements, she still felt the weight of being the only black woman in a room full of executives. It was a feeling she had learned to ignore over the years, but it still lingered in the air like a faint odor that no one wanted to acknowledge. Today, however, something felt different. The whispers in the hallway were louder, the stares more noticeable, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut through with a knife. "Rachel," said a voice from behind her. It was Brenda, one of the senior managers, a woman who had always treated Rachel with thinly veiled disdain. "You're early today." Rachel forced a smile. "Yeah, thought I'd get a head start." As she walked to her desk, Rachel felt the eyes of her colleagues on her. It wasn't just curiosity or interest, it was judgment. There were always those who resented her presence in the office, those who questioned her qualifications, and those who silently rooted for her to fail. But Rachel had learned not to care. She had bigger battles to fight. She sat down at her desk and began preparing for the weekly meeting. The phone rang, and she answered it, her voice calm and composed. "Rachel, can you come to the conference room in 5? It was Dan, the CEO. "Sure thing, I'll be right there." As Rachel made her way to the conference room, she couldn't shake the feeling that today was going to be different. She had no idea just how different it would be. The meeting started with the usual small talk about the company's upcoming projects and quarterly goals. Rachel sat quietly, taking notes and nodding along, waiting for her turn to speak. She had a presentation prepared, one that would highlight the company's recent marketing strategies and propose new ideas to boost their brand image. But before she could begin, something unexpected happened. One of the junior employees, a man named Greg, walked in late. He was holding a can of Coca-Cola, and he appeared to be in a hurry. As he approached the table, he tripped, deliberately as it seemed, and the can of Coca-Cola splashed all over Rachel's outfit. The soda soaked her blouse, dripped down her skirt, and even splattered on her notes and laptop. There was a moment of stunned silence. The room froze. Greg stood there, a slight smirk on his face, clearly amused by the scene he had caused. "Oops, my bad," Greg said sarcastically, his voice dripping with false innocence. "Guess I wasn't paying attention." Rachel's hand trembled as she wiped the sticky liquid off her blouse. She could feel the humiliation creeping in, but she refused to let it show. This wasn't the first time she had faced such casual racism in the workplace. The microaggressions, the dismissive comments, the subtle jabs, she had experienced it all. But this was different. This was intentional. Her colleagues looked on, some nervously glancing at their phones, others avoiding eye contact. No one stepped in to help, and the tension in the room was palpable. Rachel's heart raced, but she took a deep breath and stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'll be right back." She left the conference room, walking quickly down the hallway toward the restroom. As she stepped inside and closed the door, she allowed herself a moment of silence. Her reflection in the mirror was a stark contrast to the rage she felt bubbling inside her. The tears that threatened to fall were not of weakness, but of sheer frustration at how her race, her gender, and her very presence in that room seemed to be a constant source of discomfort for others. It wasn't long before the door swung open, and a voice she recognized broke through her thoughts. "Rachel, are you okay?" It was Dan, the CEO, his face filled with concern. "I'm fine," Rachel replied, her voice steady now, just a little shaken. Dan stepped closer, his expression softening. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. We'll make sure this doesn't go unaddressed." But before Rachel could respond, there was another voice, this time from behind Dan. "Don't bother," came the cold, cutting voice of Brenda. "It's just a little soda. She'll get over it." Rachel's eyes narrowed. She had expected this. She had seen this kind of behavior from Brenda before. It wasn't about the soda. It was about power, about making sure Rachel knew her place. Just as Rachel opened her mouth to respond, the door to the restroom swung open once again. But this time, it wasn't just Dan standing there. It was a man who commanded instant attention. A man who was not only known in corporate circles, but whose name sent waves through the entire industry. A man who had been in the headlines countless times, not for his wealth, but for his ability to transform companies with a single move. Her husband, Miles Matthews, billionaire, tech mogul, and founder of several successful startups, walked into the restroom. His gaze swept over the room, and the air seemed to change, growing heavier with his presence. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to be in the building today. He had been out of town on business, but there he was, standing in front of her. "What's going on here?" Miles asked, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. Rachel hesitated for only a moment, and then, in a voice that carried a quiet power, she said, "Someone decided to throw a can of soda at me." Miles' expression darkened. He didn't need to ask who had done it, he already knew. "I see," he said slowly, looking around the room. His eyes locked onto Greg, who stood there looking both guilty and defiant. "Greg, is it?" "Yes, sir," Greg stammered, his bravado slipping away. Miles walked toward him with a calmness that only added to the tension in the room. "You're fired," he said flatly, "and I'm not going to waste my time explaining why. You know exactly why." There was a stunned silence. Everyone in the room, including Greg, seemed frozen. Miles didn't look at anyone else. His eyes remained fixed on the young man in front of him. Rachel felt a strange sense of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. She had fought so hard to get where she was, and in that moment it felt like a victory. But there was no real joy in it, not after everything she had endured. Her husband turned to her and smiled gently. "Let's go home," he said. "You don't have to put up with this anymore." Rachel nodded, and for the first time that day, she felt her shoulders relax.